Cool.
Okay. So
Designed by Cody.
Okay. I think we're finally live. We're to see if anybody's been hanging out waiting for us to start because it's been 15 minutes. They're probably like, well, maybe it's not happening today. So that's fine. So hello, everyone. Nice to see you all. Despite all the problems I'm having with AT&T over here in Dallas, welcome to the third day of the Dash. This day is dedicated to experimentation. So like previous days, we're going to kind of jimmy up the initial parameters of how we engage this third day so that there's not a rewind to what we didn't get done the previous day. So I'm sorry about that, Cody. I know it's like leaving things unfinished, but it's just to basically put more of an emphasis on the process and at least those particular steps in the process that we want to get some feedback on. So if you've been here the first couple of days, you kind of know the routine. I'll be using a canvas that's basically somewhat blank, and then bringing in exercises, and then asking questions about intent, clarity, what you would expect, anything that's missing, so that I can get a really good idea of what this exercise is really asking for and what your perception of that is. If at any time you have any questions, whether you are a panelist or an observer, go ahead and put those into the chat. We're more than happy to field those and clarify them. If you're watching on YouTube, I'll occasionally look at that, but not as much. But again, do speak up if you have any insights or observations about what's going on here. Now, the thing that I haven't done in the past couple of sessions is actually give everyone on the call the ability to introduce themselves beyond like kind of a cursory examination. So I know we did it offline, but I think for the record, I'd like to know who I'm dealing with. So the deal is I'm going to call on someone on the call and just basically, say their name, and then you can give an introduction any way you like, whatever we do. I think since JF brought it before, let's say the somewhat energizer icebreaker is going to be where you would want to go on vacation after COVID's done, what you have planned. Some of you already have answered this in the past, but I'd like to see if anything's changed. So I'm going to start with Finn. Finn, if you could, please introduce yourself and let everyone know where are you going to break for vacation when this is all said and done.
I have no clue. I was just thinking about that, and I actually saw it somewhat being picked on first because I think I'm somewhat new to the group, but I have no clue where they'd like to go. I think so. First of all, my name is Finn. That should be obvious by now, I think. I'm 20 years old in Bremerhaven, Germany, which is a beautiful city. We call it the Detroit of Germany. Or the east of the West. It has its charm. I like it here. And I'm studying at a university, team entrepreneurship, which is based on a Finnish education concept launched in the 90s, trying to teach entrepreneurial competencies in sort of a new and more efficient way, which is more based on project learning rather than traditional lectures. I enjoy that very much. As part of our university program, we start our own companies right at the start of the bachelor's degree, which is to say that we're getting the legal framework for entrepreneurial activity. Not that we're actually starting to use that immediately or to produce sensible business ideas immediately. Nonetheless, it is very much fun and it is very real. And I am really dealing with, really getting to deal with the complex work environment that the world is today. And a few months ago, I was introduced to Design Sprints by Sabrina Görlich of Design Sprint Studio Stuttgart. And that was basically, was not so much an introduction as a revival for my desire to facilitate, to host teams. I've actually been doing this for like 3 years, ever since high school. It somewhat started. And yeah, I sort of found my way here that way, I guess.
So what's the first business you're going to start up?
So right now, currently, or for the past semester, my colleagues and I have been working on an agency developing GIFs, which is, the picture format GIF. it's sort of making a comeback since search engines for GIFs have been implemented to social media a few years ago. And for the past few years, companies have been picking up on using GIFs as a social media as a marketing tool, because yeah, it has quite some interesting aspects where you know, since the realm of sharing content on social media has moved more towards private, so people are sending each other more, I don't know, memes or whatever on messaging services rather than sharing them publicly on their Instagram profile or their Facebook profile or something. The importance of GIFs have increased. So there are more and more GIFs used in everyday basis, on an everyday basis.
Got it. Okay. So where are we sending you off to vacation?
I don't know. I think I'd actually like to go back to the US sometimes. I think you know, waiting for COVID to be over might take a little bit longer then, but yeah, I'd probably say New York.
Okay. New York's a fine place, busy place. Definitely not Detroit, but it's a good place. Cool. All right. Thank you very much, Finn. Who do you want to call on next for an introduction? Who would you like to know more about?
I think I'll call on JF.
All right, JF, you're up.
All right. Thank you, Finn. So I am JF Unson, and one little interesting tidbit about me. Tomorrow, July 30th, is my 30-year anniversary here in Silicon Valley. So I started work July 30th, 1990, and I'm still here, alive and kicking, still having fun in Silicon Valley. I've been an Agilist since 1998, and most people are still on Scrum and Kanban and discussing all that and all the scaling, and I'm more interested right now in the whole organizational agility part, trying to get the whole organization agile. And my interest here is, for the first few years in Silicon Valley, I was interfacing a lot with UX and design. So I do have a sort of UX background in the sense of I was a UI engineer, but had a lot of UX knowledge through osmosis from all the UX designers that I've been dealing with since the 1990s. So that is me at this point. Where I would want to go next, that's a very hard question in terms of vacation, because I love to travel, as you can see from my background. Right now, if something quick and easy, I'd love to travel and go back to Puerto Vallarta. But there's also another part. I want to go back to San Sebastian in Spain, because I love the food and the wine over there. So those are probably the two that I would go back to immediately after this. And so the next person I am going to call on is Cody.
Hello, I'm Cody. I live in Canada. I live in Victoria, which is on Vancouver Island. I'm going to kind of start with the end, but one thing actually that has been happening with this sort of lockdown is that I have been doing a lot more exploration on Vancouver Island, and just feeling like, oh my God, you know, I live in the place that in one of those places that people come to visit as tourists. And so, you know, a lot more camping, a lot more hiking, and it's been so lovely. The Pacific West Coast is just stunning. It's stunning. It's so beautiful. This is my first dash, so it's pretty exciting, and I am enjoying it very, very much. I'm actually coming from I work with teams, primarily around group process and helping teams to develop trust and work through conflict. So I think that one of the parts when you look at, you know, to make an effective team, you got to work on people, you have to work on process, and you have to have, you know, a good focus with the product or the project. And I love these kinds of the canvases and the processes. I think it kind of is a way to flatten the room, involve everybody. But in terms of team development, having teams know how to do these things for themselves, I think is such an empowering part. So that's kind of what drew me here, is how can I help teams that I work with to learn how to do this for themselves so that they can start to incorporate this type of methodology in their day-to-day working. And I think it's time that these kinds of design dashes and the sprints kind of come out of just tech and come into like far more applications. Anybody doing anything, anytime can use this. So that's sort of some of my interest.
Cool. So beyond living in a live vacation spot, who else would you like to know more about?
Let's go with Alex. I mean, you're in prime vacation land right now. I can't help but be like, I'd like to sit at that table. What would we have for dinner?
We would have some nice fish, rice wine, and a salad. But if you ask me, but as you can hear, it's a little bit, yeah. So the true background.
Actually, the outdoor echo. When you're outdoors, you definitely have that echo that happens.
Yes, because I'm sitting in an empty space right now. Vacation. Vacation starts. Vacation starts on Friday for a weekend. I'm going to Cologne, visiting some friends. I lived there for some time, and my idea is going to, when it becomes colder here, going to Portugal, to the far south, like Faro, something like that. That would be really cool. It's a very nice. So I love Portugal. I love Lisboa, which is where the streets are glittering and everything. I was there when Portugal became European champion, and I was at the main place where it's the ocean and where was a big screen, and it was a fantastic thing for us. I'm a design thinking facilitator and coach, an independent one. I learned a lot through Rob and the GVDS. In my former life, I was an online marketeer for e-commerce, so growth hacking, agile mindset as well, not as JF, but so I played a little bit the PO that is not close to what you have done, but I have that mindset. And obviously now design thinking, so that is like a triangle that I'm working with. The pretotyping got me struck at GVDS. I created a small course myself and iterating that as well. I learned tons here, and I'm very thankful for Rob, for having me and allowing me to learn more and more. So that's a little bit my background. Yep. And I like next a little bit to know more about America.
Oh, muted.
All right. So my name is Americo. I'm located in Lisboa, or Lisbon, Portugal. Alex must have been in the Nations Park, right? Nations Park? That's a very nice spot to be. My background is professional consulting service. I've been working since early in marketing research, and actually I work as an independent consultant in marketing research and innovation, helping small business and companies to grow. Something like 6 months ago, I came in contact with an article in Medium written by a guy called Robert Scrow, and I found that amazing. and I started digging a little bit more and found GVDS. Then I took part in GVDS, an awesome event. I took part in a team where Graham was working with me. A guy to work with, and that's mostly the journey, my journey related with you and what we have in common in this chat. So vacations, where I want to go next, I would like to visit Netherlands. I was there something like almost 2 years ago. I was in a professional industry event, and I enjoyed that country. I found it fantastic, and I would like to be there again with my wife and my daughters. But you know, the season is complicated. This is very difficult to travel. There is no trust in moving outside outside of the country, because Portugal is doing very well in controlling the pandemic, and so likely I will be around in beaches around Lisbon that are and the weather is great. Likely too much hot, but still great to go to the beach and have some fun.
Very nice.
And
I've heard enough about that Robert Scrope guy. He's overrated. He just,
yeah.
you don't have to bring him up. He's yeah.
Who is that guy?
So it's missing Graham and Diana.
Yeah.
Diana is online. Is muted?
I think so. Hang on.
So, Graham, go.
My name's Graham Smale. I'm a retired stock exchange executive trying to retread myself in a sunset career in this wonderful space of innovation and virtual facilitation. And my passion is to try and make innovation simpler for people. There's just so much jargon and language around it, and how to make it accessible to more people. And I think virtual is the way to go for me. I love it. And it's great engaging with you guys in this community. And then last one is Diana, I think.
No vacation spots? You aren't going on vacation? You're just going to stay where you are?
No, the vacation spot is where I am right now, with pick my background.
Got it. Okay. Diana, you have audio, or do you you have to tell me in chat if you can speak, otherwise we can try to get it running up again. Hang on. Maybe she's not there. Let's just double check really fast. Yep, she's just muted, but doesn't work. Doesn't work. All right, hang on. I'm gonna see if I can unmute you. No, can it? Oh, there you go. Whoa. Try now, Diana. See if you can speak. No? All right. Well, she could speak. She could say that she's fabulous. She's been around the world, and she's planning on going to Rome sometime soon. So
Hello?
you can correct. Oh, wait a minute. I heard something. Wait a minute. Hey.
Me and the audio. I'm so sorry. Seems to be a running gag now.
Oh, that's okay. You're just the commentator. So like, I want to clarify some points that were made up before that were made by the assembly. So like, you're the fact checker of the entire thing to keep us honest throughout the entire session.
So, where to start? I'm Diana. I'm from Germany. I am actually located in very close to Düsseldorf at the moment. So, Alex, Köln is just around the corner. And for the past about 2 years, I've worked in branding, mostly branding and business design. And I was lucky enough to work with different customers, from people who just start out and start their business to startups and bigger companies.
Yeah.
So for the past few months, I've been working with a consulting company again, and am now in a project lead position.
So when you're not doing project lead work, where are you taking your next vacation?
That's a good question. If we were able to travel, we would probably go to Greece or Turkey.
I heard Greece is really good to visit. I've never been there, but that was one of the places that I have earmarked to kind of go if I start doing international travel again.
Yeah, always wanted to go there. So I have family in Istanbul, so those are always our two options.
Okay, so between the two of us, if one of us gets to Greece first, then we're going to have to post something online and say, okay, Robert, this is what's here to go out there, and vice versa.
Yeah.
Okay. Sounds good. Okay, so we've spent enough time struggling with AT&T on my end and kind of getting to know one another. Let's get into the meat of the matter, and I will share my screen as well as the link to today's Canvas. So give me a minute and I'll bring that over. me see where chat is. There. Okay. So that should get you to the first panel that we're going to be looking at. And like yesterday, the dynamic is that you are free to comment on anything you see. You can be as positive or as negative or as constructive or as critiquey as you'd like. It's all fun and well to me. I'm totally good with kind of getting some perspective on things, but I'm going to share the intent of the exercise before we kind of get into anything. So one of the things that we uncovered yesterday during day 2 was that I was trying to mix in products and services with pains and problems. So I found out that I was putting the cart before the horse then, and I really needed to concentrate on the problems and pains of the people that we could best serve. So what you're seeing here in the upper left is the space that we seem to, with our idea that we had originally on where we could go with helping out others. So our audience seems to be in the low pain, low buying power sector. And I chose the one that was the most voted, which was creatives, artists, and musicians. Now, these are hypothetical problems and pains. These are not ones that we went through the exercise and actually voted on, but this is to kind of get some idea of hypothetically what this class of worker or performer or person in a professional capacity is really struggling with. And to review, it's can't find local work due to COVID. There's no demand for what they do. They don't understand technology enough to try new things, or they're having trouble diversifying their offerings online. So again, these are hypotheticals, but the idea is that this is the spectrum of what this audience may be kind of experiencing. And what we're attempting to do with the experiment is to set up something that will enable us to test different products and services in the market. Now, yeah, that's a good idea. I'm going to actually summon everyone to where I'm at. If Mural will keep that menu option available to me when I went over. Okay, so here's the idea with this first step, is that instead of going into products and services and thinking about what we could actually offer, leaving it open-ended so that if you were to think of an experimentation you could do in 24 hours, so that's the time constraint, what kind of situation would you do for the audience that we're thinking about? So this could be creative artists and musicians. So there's that kind of box. If in this situation, they'll choose to do this for this particular reason, and that reason could be correlated with the problems and pains that this particular group has. So for reference, I'm going to take this audience one that we have here. I'm going to put it over on the right so that there's more of a correlation and visually you can see it better. But the idea basically is to kind of speculate on what those scenarios could be. And then you do 2 different sets of kind of verification. One is you could go through some of the panels and just put basically highlight or call out the ones that seem really intriguing in terms of situation or what they would choose. And the other is to hold a vote for each particular line item, to say like this is a particular one that you'd like to take forward into kind of setting up for experimentation. So that's the intent of this exercise. And if you could, there's 2 things you could do right off the bat. One is to ask questions about what you're seeing here. And 2 is you can make suggestions on what you would rather see rather than what I'm presenting here. So I'm going to start off with Cody this time and ask you what your initial impressions are of this exercise in relation to what the intent is.
Give me 1 second. I was just having trouble with the mural board. It kept routing me back to the other one. So I'm finally where I'm supposed to be.
Okay. Do you need a minute to look over things?
Yeah, that would be great. Thanks.
Okay. JFN, I'll call upon you to kind of give your 2 cents.
So on first impression, I'm seeing potential for a brainstorm session with these kinds of questions, and it's very focused. This probably is leading towards the pretotype experimentation phase, which I think you're going after, right after this. And I can definitely see a way, I like the fact that it kind of focuses people in the next 24 hours. as opposed to thinking of a big solution potentially that they might want to do, because that is typically what happens when I engage with engineering teams here in the Valley. Is when you present them a problem, they're automatically going, oh, why don't we build this thing immediately right off the bat? And it doesn't necessarily, they go immediately into solution mode. And actually sometimes the solution, if you're especially in established companies, thinking of that solution immediately, so, and the team's going and moving towards it, or even someone high up in the executive chain, there's very little prototyping and very little validation coming. And so I think this can definitely solve that problem of, instead of immediately jumping into solution mode, actually having a quick time to think about things.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that. Graham, what are your thoughts about this?
At the end of the day, if we're going to doing a pretotype, you are going to be putting some form of product, service, something in order to solve their problems and pains. So we're not avoiding solutions. What you've done here is kind of narrow the time frame to force people to put in their time to data. But we are trying to create solutions in my assessment. Otherwise, you've got nothing to advertise. Or is that not your intention?
Well, yeah, that's eventually driving towards it. So one of the open-ended questions I had when I created this is like, am I, again, kind of jumping to conclusions where there needs to be a previous step around exploring problems and products and services for this audience specifically. So you know who they are, you know their pains and problems. But instead of doing this where you're thinking of the solution or the product inside of this kind of scenario where you're going to be searching for a signal, you actually have a step previous. It's like, okay, let's think of existing services that are in the marketplace, and as well as new ones, and kind of give the ability to sort that out and search for it, and then see which one seems to vet out, which would make this process a little bit easier. Like you have a top 3 or a top 5, but it focuses people to choose on which one they want to do. That's the only thing I didn't leave in. I left out purposely so that I could see if the will choose this segment of this process would actually translate properly.
Although this exercise allows you to look at habitual behavior in a set of circumstances, which can lead to an innovative idea to counter that or help them more. So it depends on what your frame is going into this exercise, whether we are dealing with solutions or whether you're trying to dig for more insights. Yeah, so that I'm not sure about.
Yeah, because we've already kind of defined our audience. We put, so it's like boxing. We've kind of put some sandboxing around our audience. We put some sandboxing around the rationale of why they would why they would do certain things. We haven't put a box around we'll choose this, or we haven't put a box about in this situation. Because in this situation, it could be anything. It could be like at home, it could be in the middle of something, but that's highly dependent upon the person that's creating it, because they have a scenario in their mind of how it would actually work. And I almost think that in this situation would be fed by we'll choose this. So their choice would involve some sort of context. But that's the only open-ended question I have is like, is it enough to just basically ask the question and have people work through this exercise? Or is there, to start off day 3 with experimentation, should things be primed by kind of thinking of products and services ahead in advance and having that color the rest of the exercises going forward? I mean, Finn, you're working in innovation right now, and you kind of have a focus on this. So what seems to make sense intuitively for you in regards to this kind of, do this before you do this, or can just basically doing kind of this hypothesis be okay?
I'm sorry, I sort of just tapped out for a second to kind of figure out where we are, read through the cards and all of the notes. Could you rephrase the question?
Yeah, so what I'm wondering is based on your standpoint from startup and innovation land, is it okay to basically couch everything in terms of this hypothesis, in terms of this statement? Or do you think that there should be some work done in advance on the products and services you could be offering this particular group based on the problems and pains?
To be honest, I don't really feel qualified to give too much of an answer to that. I just don't have the experience. But I think, yeah, no, I don't think I have much of an opinion to that.
Okay, no problem. America, what are your thoughts on it?
When you specify 24 hours from now, you are this fits very well in terms of integrating prototyping with design sprints, and that is our purpose here. But many experiments I did in the design sprints will take more time than that. Is this just a suggestion, or can we specify other timings, like 2 days from now or something like that?
No, and I'll tell you that the rationale of why it's being time boxed. The reason is that this is just basically to get a signal. This isn't to do a percentage of an audience or to try to figure out a time. This is just to see if you put a little bit of effort into this space, do you get some sort of response? Like, do you actually get like 2 out of 10 or 3 out of 10 or something where it indicates that there's more than just one kind of haphazard random kind of engagement? Does there seem to be more engagement involved where it's just a quick kind of validation? But once you have that, then you can go into one that's a little bit longer, 24, but then it'll be 48 to 72 hours. You increase the time, you increase the, you have a baseline for your X and the XYZ hypothesis. You start to figure out where you can play with things, but you have that initial rationale and baseline in just 24 hours to suggest, out of this one, after doing this a couple of times, this one actually got a couple of people to engage, and it could be because of a lot of reasons. Let's investigate a little more. Like, it's almost trying to, where in the world is Carmen Sandiego? You have some idea of where Carmen's been because she left a restaurant, and there's this, so there's an indication there. But then you're going to say, okay, based on this, you have this information firsthand. Now you're going to try a different location or a different place and see if that same variation works in that capacity. So you're building upon, and it's like an evidence-based kind of building of different hypotheses.
Okay. I personally like it because we will be pushed to non-digital solutions mostly. Experiments will be pushed mostly to physical or relationship. I'm not envisioning now how we can do it. Face-to-face, personal, physical, something more not digital. And I like it. I think it's okay. I think it's very okay.
Okay. Diana, you were about to say something before. What was that?
Could you maybe explain to me, I'm not sure if I'm the only one who doesn't know the difference, but I have only ever worked with minimum viable products that have been prototyped. So where do you differentiate between a Preto and a prototype?
So a pretotype in the definition, and somebody can correct me on this, is where you do something very fast and very cheap to get market reaction. A prototype is where you get something a bit more designed, a little bit more involved. Maybe a lot more people are involved in working on it with the intent that you're going to try to make something as real as possible without it being too much time and effort, like the Goldilocks effect. A prototype is probably a very cheap, and fast, it's like an existing Apple AirPods, and these are like $149. You get the knockoffs of these that are like $15, $20, and that's kind of what you're after. Still functional, still works, but probably isn't as aesthetic or as good, but kind of you test and see whether or not it works really fast. And it's basically meant to be get your data as fast as cheap as possible. A prototype is kind of something more built out.
Maybe I can add a little. Maybe add a little bit to that, because I made quite a lot of thoughts around that, because I worked with MVP and prototypes. So what I learned, and I take this as well from Alberto a little bit, that a minimum viable product is to prove that the product is viable, that you can do really some kind of code, and that you have a first supply chain that works and everything, and that you can really, on a sustainable base, deliver the product. Might not scale, might not be profitable, but it should at least work and be ready to go. Before that, normally you do a prototype to find out if something is technically feasible and if it is organizational feasible, if your organization can do that, or if you need to add something, and if it is really technically possible. And the pretotype, like the pretended prototype, for me would be something that would be even before, does customer want your product? And if customers want your product, most of the time it's feasible, so you can build a prototype and you can then later on build an MVP, because you can make it viable somehow. The tricky part though with that is in regards to the pretotype, you can take a prototype and pretotype with that, and you can take an MVP and pretotype with that. So that's my take on it.
With the example you have here, it would be like a pretotype. I'm imagining for the top example with the grocery store with the chocolate bar would be to take, like he uses an example like it's in the book, like you'd take the chocolate bar, you'd wrap an existing chocolate bar in the label Forever Chocolate, you put it at a checkout and you see if anybody picks it up. You haven't actually made the chocolate bar, a real chocolate bar Forever Chocolate doesn't exist yet, but you're testing to see would anybody even want the thing?
Yeah, that's exactly it.
I can see how this little canvas leads into that part next by mapping out that experience.
Yeah. Deb asked a question of, I love the challenge of the 24-hour limit, but I'm stuck on how and where you can get feedback that quickly online. Is the how obvious to everyone else? So go ahead, what were you gonna say?
For me, it's obvious because I could make like an Eventbrite event and I could advertise that on LinkedIn, and I would get data within 24 hours if people are doing that. Or I could do some Facebook ads and advertise something and could do a landing page. It's of course, you have to have a certain set of skills for some things, but you could do videos, it's very, very, very different. And the question is, can you do it yourself? If you think of an organization, they can do a lot in 24 hours and track a lot in 24 hours.
There's also the concept of watering holes too, being able to figure out where people hang out online. So for artists and creatives and other types, there are certain communities that are there where you just can't go in and advertise because then you're seen as spammy or kind of like just marketing speak. But if you ask a question, it's like, I'm interested in seeing if people would be interested in this service or doing this. This is what I'm kind of exploring. Would anyone else be interested? If so, could you PM me or DM me your personal email address? I know you don't know me, but here's my LinkedIn profile, here's this. So you put a little bit of your own reputation behind it, so that you're not just like somebody who's harnessing email addresses, but you get people that out of the 500, 600 that see it, you have maybe, if 0 respond, then maybe it's the wrong place that you did that, so you gotta try somewhere else. Or if you get some response and you get questions more than you get commitment, then it's either your communication style is not working, or what you're kind of conveying about the idea doesn't work. There can be a lot of parameters, but the whole point is to start getting in that habit of being able to have some sort of validation from the market. And if it requires you to practice your execution, oh well. If you take the approach that Alex has about that, suggesting about advertising or putting it online and doing it that way, that's another validation point as well. I personally am very communication and community oriented, so I go after watering holes. And even though I'm associated with the idea, I still get pretty good feedback or at least an initial reaction about what it is. I also have, like when we did Bonobo, which is the knowledge learning experiment in GBDS, we put out something that says, okay, we have a new learning system in place. And I think I put it and I published it as me, but I had people signing up for that were not in my network at all. They were completely outside of it. They were in different places. And we had advertised in different spots on Facebook and other places, just basically to spread the word. And we got out of the 25 impressions we had about 6 people sign up, and 3 of them actually gave money to sign up for it. So we were like, what? We were totally surprised when it had happened. But it's one example, like if you do something like that, you spend like a good 2 to 3 hours concentrating on the thing that you're going to create. That should be enough time to give you something fast and cheap and to get something back from the market. But the faster and cheaper you can do, the better. Okay, so I think I covered everything. So what the big question is this good enough to try this exercise as it is, or would you want to explore products and services? Do you have a preference either way? If you're interested in just doing the what we have here in terms of the exercise, go ahead, and with the last session, Graham, I'm going to do this. You do your one finger and you kind of twirl it up like this, like, okay, let's get going. Like we're going to keep on going and try the exercise. Or if you want to kind of go into products and services a bit, put up your hand like this and kind of put it in the camera. So that's the vote. It's like products and services exploration like this, or keep on going with the current exercise and look for some market validation. What would you like to do?
More validation.
Okay. All right. So the way this works is just basically to pick a row that you have. You can choose any of the 24 hours from now, and you can do more than one row if you like. If you do, I can just basically, in fact, I'll take this and I'll put another row just below this. I'll give everyone about kind of 5 minutes to work through this a bit, and we'll see how it pans out. Again, you can use the audience definition on the right of each particular section, and I'll just copy and paste this several times so that you have that reference point at lower parts of the exercise so you don't lose context. And if at any point you have questions during this process, then please speak up and let me know. This is all about learning and exploring the process to see what works. So go ahead and start by thinking of the situation or the audience. You can even put the audience first if that's the thing you want to anchor to. Or if you have a particular idea or about a product or service, you can start, we'll choose this and go that route. So you can start from any point out of those 4 boxes, okay? So I'll give it a go for 5 minutes and let's see what we come up with. Hang on. Hmm. We have about a minute left. If you'd like some more time, all you have to do is in chat, go ahead and just give me a +1, and then I'll know that we should add 1 more minute, or +2 if you want 2 more minutes. Yeah. You got 1 minute added to the timer. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're working on a card, please finish up your work. We will be going over each of the scenarios. If you'd like to continue working, you're more than welcome to do so. At this point, we're going to be going over, at this point, what I'd ask everyone to do, if you're finished with your work, is to look over the different scenarios and go ahead and read through them. And there's 2 things you can do. One is to clarify your understanding of what's being asked by either asking for a particular clarification on a particular choice or audience, or the reason why they're doing what they do. Or if you'd like to point out something that looks really interesting, you can also do that as well. If I don't hear any kind of conversation or anyone raising anything, the next step in this would be to kind of put some focus on which one could be an interesting one to do together as a collective, and kind of move that forward into another process. Now, one thing that we did in a previous stash, which is something that should be pointed out, is that when we didn't focus and didn't put emphasis on one particular scenario, we basically had people adopt a certain scenario to do on their own. And then we taught them how to do pretotyping in that direction. This dash does things differently, and it says, out of all these scenarios, which is one that's going to be the fastest, the cheapest, and potentially could be the most effective. So that's going to be the criteria you would use to kind of narrow things down. So I guess the first question to ask is there any particular scenario that you're seeing here out of all the ones that have been created that looks the most interesting to you, or that the one that you have questions about? And we have 15, so there's quite a bit to kind of chew through. But it looks like we have a lot of different options to go with. But is there anyone in particular that looks interesting or that you have questions about? And I'll bring out, excuse me, I'll call out a name to kind of get this started. And let's go with JF. as you're looking through these, are you noticing anything? You have any questions or any particular one looks interesting?
There are a few that are definitely interesting, and I also see some common themes about potential testing of the market. So one thing, the ones that are very interesting to me is this second one, when entering the supermarket during COVID, and then limited tickets for stand-up, we'll choose this. So that's very interesting to me. It's similar to, where was that other one that I saw that was also interesting? It's similar to the one on the second row. During COVID, gatherings aren't allowed. People who used to attend concerts or art venues will choose an online event, a virtual street of options with tickets to attend or visit, much like going through for a walk downtown. So something like that. So those are the two that are kind of interesting, but they're similar to what I wrote down in terms of some of the things to test. So those are, I'm starting to see at least themes emerging from this that are common between people. I think that's the biggest takeaway.
Now, do you think if we narrowed it down to one particular story or one particular storyline, do you think that's going to hamper our efforts collectively to be able to build an experiment, or do you think it's proper to give focus?
My question to that is, when you say narrow down, when do you expect to do that narrow down? Because I'm not too clear on what is the trigger criteria to narrow down. Because as we're doing this experiment right now, part of me wants to do like a certain discussion with a team, because I want to delay a decision as late as possible, because I don't want the team to make a premature decision.
Okay.
So that's where I'm coming from. And that's the reason why I kind of asked the question, what is the criteria for narrowing down?
Okay. Diana, what are your thoughts on this so far, in terms of like some particular things you're noticing about some of the scenarios here, and are there any that you like or any you have questions about?
So the exercise itself, I think it took me 2 attempts to actually get into the right mindset, I would say. I think my second attempt was okay. So if you look at, I mean, how many people were we? Like 10? Look at all these inputs. It's really a lot. If you want to go all over, I mean, in reality, probably, if this was not an experiment, you would have to go over every single one just to explain very briefly what it is about. Probably, I would guess, which would take a lot of time. So maybe the narrowing down could be by the person who wrote it themselves, so that they bring forward what they think is their best idea, which is limiting. Or there would have to be kind of a quick, like a, how do you call it? Speed dating round of idea pitching.
What I could do, and to kind of give the next step, is to kind of put in what the next step is in this, as a way of kind of showing where it could go, and then maybe it's a little bit easier to see how that next step is kind of bridged. Would that kind of help things? So we have step 1 here for let's look for some market validation.
Step 2, yes, it would be better.
Here, then let me just pause this for a second so that I'm not inundated everyone with this. Then the next step would be, bring this over, be this. So this is starting a story about market engagement. So the idea is that once you have your hypothesis or the particular one you want to go with, you start thinking about where the story begins and where the story ends in relation to this. So you have the scenario here of what the hypothesis is. But what I'm attempting to do with this exercise is to start thinking about the journey of how someone would work through this scenario. Like, do they start off by seeing your advertisement, or in this particular one, for the grocery store, when checking out the line of the grocery store? So like, this person like is checking out items in the line. What do they notice? What do they actually do? What do you, but basically just put a beginning and an end. Don't worry about the middle. But the intent here is to start the process of telling a story about market engagement that would help to inform how you would actually do the pretotype. And then I'll add one more so you can kind of see how the steps kind of play out. Wait a minute. So then there's this one. So I think if you see how it kind of evolves, you'll get an idea of where I was thinking about taking things. Okay. So once you had your starting point in terms of where you could go, then it's similar to the exercise you just did, where you begin a starting point and an ending point after you kind of work those out in the previous exercise. And then you'd be able to put in the steps that someone would take to experience the hypothesis that you're kind of going through. Now, they would all be similar in terms of how they would do, but then you would kind of refine it even further to get the ideal kind of engagement scenario of the pretotype that you're going to build, or the signal you're going to build. And then that way it's a lot easier to kind of figure out how you're going to make it work, or how you're going to actually create it. So that was the intent of these two follow-up exercises to the one you just did. So again, positive, negative, questions, confusion, anything that you'd like to kind of point out, please do.
So I think I would add to what Diana said by saying that, I mean, it's amazing what we generated in like 5 minutes, but something has to happen with the generated content for me to get the feeling that we actually made use of what we generated. If we just decided on one thing and moved on from there, it would sort of feel like a waste to have developed all these other ideas. Something that would, first of all, I think there's like a tiny amount of time needed to grasp everything, to read through all of the other solutions. And then secondly, maybe there's you can go with some sort of exercise to locate a couple of parts. Maybe there's just this one reason that is very, very good. Maybe you can just give lots of votes and people can decide on not entire journeys, not entire rows, but maybe only single cards that stand out as very important. And maybe this can give an opportunity to for the group to maybe move forward with one row, but also with a couple of other cards in mind that stand out as very good ideas that the group can keep in mind when continuing with that row.
Okay.
So in regards to narrowing down from the first exercise that we made, I'm not 100% sure about the mechanism. I think of like a voting session on rows or something like that. I would narrow it down, but I would narrow it down only to one. The idea behind that is to make not only one or few experiments about one thing, but to make a few experiments about a few ideas. So like 3 ideas, and you do 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 experiments with that.
Okay.
That's just the thought. And for the coming exercises, you're exploring like the story and things, and I think that is good. But I was wondering if we say, isn't there a way that we can, from this first exercise that we now made, directly jump into how could we experiment with that? How could we make an experiment with that and skip those story elements? But that is probably a very Alex direct German style of seeing it.
So not going the route of actually creating a story to kind of like a storyboard to kind of see how this would be played out, but going direct to being able to create the the pretotype that would basically support this scenario.
Exactly, because we want to go for the desirability. And if it is desired, then later on we would go into a story and see and imagine how that user experience is and how we can improve it in a prototype scenario.
Okay.
That,
okay. Graham, what are your thoughts so far?
I quite like the story stepping process, but what I'm still unsure of is whether we need to narrow down or whether you're still trying to open up, and what is it we're trying to push out into the story. So embedded in the things on the left are a number of different solutions, and are you going to want to, how do one synthesize that exercise? The storyboarding side makes a lot of sense to me about how you think you're going to take one or more ideas through to the storyboard. But I'm still stuck on this previous exercise. It's just me.
Okay. Let's do a hypothetical. Let's do something Finn has suggested where we're actually voting on the cards that are the most appealing. I have a couple of thoughts in mind, but I want to kind of explore this a bit. So let's say if we're doing a top three for like potentially a top three, what you're going to be doing with this scenario is everyone's going to get 12 votes, and you're going to vote on 3 cards in this situation, 3 cards in our audience, 3 cards in the will choose this, and 3 cards for this reason. Now that's the vote, but do you think 5 would be a better number, or do you think would 3 probably work better in terms of like the amount of choices that you may have?
So you're trying to create the Franken story rather than the single line item.
Correct. I want to try to follow Finn's logic around this a bit, just to see where it goes.
I would limit ourselves to 3, just to see what comes out.
Right. Okay, Cody, do you have a preference either way?
No, I'm sort of I was just thinking about how what stuck up for me is similar to what JF said, is that there's some similarities between some of the ideas, and I'm really curious about how, like, there's some things that you're like, oh, those kind of feel the same, like they feel related, and some of those relationships, but I guess one could just choose one thread of relationships and vote with those. I think 3 is probably better.
Should we do a round of similarities before? So check out if there are similar cards and give them a different color before?
Let's go down that route and see what happens. So if you're finding similarities between cards, it's a matter of just basically choosing the cards themselves and giving them a different color. You don't want to use obviously the same color for 2 different types of similarities, but the way to do it is just basically to highlight particular cards in, say, the ones that were done, and just make them the same color, so that visually we can kind of check those out to see where the commonalities are between all of them. And to make things easier, what I think I'll do is I'll take out my examples, so that makes it so that it's less crowded, and we have a little bit more to concentrate on.
So I have one more suggestion. Do you guys think it would make sense to have one card that summarizes the idea? Like, for example, for the first one, stand-up comedy in your car or something like
a title.
Yeah.
Like, so basically
get
there would
the
be
essence of the idea, you know?
Okay. So there would be like something like a title over here.
What do you guys think? Would that help?
Yeah, it creates a anchoring point, which is both positive and negative. If you're trying to create the Franken story, then you just want to say, which is most intriguing card for me? And you'll end up with the parallel universe story or Franken story. But if you're trying to choose a line approach, then a title could be useful.
So I'll put something on the very far right to say like, and we'll call it, and make that as like a summary of what's been kind of talked about. And then we just basically follow down from there. Oops. I'll go ahead and put the other cards in those spaces. So if you remember which ones you had actually done, you could basically put in what the title should be for there. If you don't, that's okay. Although it's not, there it is, it's sticking for some reason. So we could do both. Oh, someone's way ahead of me down there. Okay. And for reference, we will be ending on time today at 11:30, so we won't be going over like in previous sessions. We'll just do what we can in the next 9 minutes. As long as AT&T works, we're good. So while those titles are being put in there, it looks like we've already kind of highlighted some similarities between particular types. But I would probably, if I had more time, I would kind of reflect on them publicly in the group to kind of go over these. But in the interest of time, I'll just basically like keep I'll assume that the color coordination that's happening here is the intent is there in terms of like seeing similarities between different things. That may influence the way people vote, but that's okay, at least for this scenario. I can't believe my son is still sleeping. I bet he's downstairs doing something. Hopefully eating. We'll have to figure that out in 7 minutes.
So when I mentioned my idea, I wasn't actually thinking so much of a Frankenstory as Graham put it, but rather a choice for one story, for one row, and then a few cards to augment the story, a few notable aspects of other ideas that are to be kept in mind for further ideas. I just wanted to put that out, and but I do also. I do also see the benefits of a Frankenstory.
So how about this? I'll pivot a bit. Let's do a vote on a row rather than individual votes, because I could see it easily being something where, let's say, without any live workshops due to Corona is voted, but then the top voted one is will the audience or just started a new business and is looking for information online. Implicitly, that's basically saying that there's value in that particular idea, but if we do it by line item, it may keep everything intact with the original thought rather than kind of doing the Frankenstein version. So I'm going to pivot and say we're going to put our votes on the "and I'll call it" row. So even if there isn't a title there for us to kind of anchor on, it basically you put your votes on that particular row only, speaking to everything on to the left. So do one last review of each of the rows, see what makes sense to you, and as before, I'll give 3 votes for each person to kind of mark which particular scenarios seem to work best for them. And then rather than kind of putting in another exercise, I'll try to explain what would happen if we were going to do a storyline kind of thing and just go straight to an experimentation. Okay. Quarantine cabaret, that's nice. That works. Quarantainment. Oh my goodness. That could be its own Netflix category. It's quarantainment. Hey. Hopefully it's all uplifting stuff and not anything, not Philadelphia, something like that. That would be inappropriate, maybe. Dance in your car. All right, we got all the titles. Let's give this to a vote. 3 votes for everybody who is on the panelist side. Let's go ahead and let's call this scenarios, just for a name. So what you're going to be doing is voting on the, and I'll call it, or it should be actually be titled, but that's okay. Vote on any of the cards on the far right-hand side to basically represent your vote for an entire scenario that's existing here, or the hypothesis that's here. So you would vote on musician kiosk, quarantine cabaret, pandemic music blogs, and so on. Just put one vote per card to represent the row. We just had Finn and Americo putting in their last ones, and we're good. All right. See what we got. So it looks like in stand-up, enjoy in your car comedian show was one of the top ones. Then we have four that were possibilities: fun building, dance in your car, virtual ticket concerts, and musician kiosk. I'm sad that quarantine cabaret did not make the cut, but that's okay. What we would ideally do at this point is to put things through an interest kind of axis that some in the GBDS may be familiar with, but I'll forego that. At least that would be the idea, is that we would narrow down those three voted ones into two top ones and move forward with those three. So before we break, the last question I have is, I know that originally this arrangement was meant to kind of organize a story around this. But I'm wondering if the nature of this could be changed so that instead of the journey the audience will experience, it's going to be more about the how to build the Preto-type. So that in this instance, you have the steps that you would take to actually like build this scenario, what you would actually do to create those. And then this would essentially be like a longer list of tasks that we could do so that everyone in the group can write down what they think is needed at this particular step in the process. And then from there, it would be a discussion of who would want to take on what particular job or what particular activity. And then you have the stage set for everyone in the group to kind of move forward and experiment in 24 hours. What do you think of that possibility? So to Alex's point, it goes straight to from this concept to actually building it out. And it wouldn't be a story, it would be building the experiment here and all the tasks that would be involved for each of these steps that we're thinking about. Alex, what do you think of that?
That makes a lot of sense to me, as opposed to the earlier question.
Okay.
Robert, just one question. We don't have a success metric for any scenario.
No, we're just trying to test signal. So we're just trying to see if there's life at the end. If we throw our bob in the water, we're trying to see if there's any bites at all. We don't know what's biting it. We're not sure what it is, but we're trying to see where the fish are in the pond, what area of the fish it is. So we're just trying to catch signal. That's about it. This next step hypothetically would be a scenario where you're thinking of what would be involved to create this top level scenario, what this group would have to do, and the steps involved. And it wouldn't be this clean cut. It would be a little bit messy, so people can put as many steps as they can think of. And then the idea thing is that you would arrange it in a certain order, and then based on that, what everyone would want to take on to make that experiment a reality, so that the time from concept to creating it is much shorter because there's a distribution of tasks that are done.
Okay, I like it.
Graham, what do you think?
Yeah, so I like the idea of the storyboard for us doing the pretotype. I quite like that. That's a nice approach.
Okay.
But it doesn't add that much, Graham.
True.
But my perception, it doesn't add that much. Neither the finding inspiration in other solutions that that exist in the market. Nothing that bring much value to the process.
Okay.
My perception. I just love the first step we did. We had a large assortment of experiments. We should go with 3 or 4 in real mode. I will go with 3 or 4, and now I will stepwise the development. And
figuring out what needs to be done.
for me, this is very lean, very fast. No time specifying hypo-zoomings and subzoomings and all those metrics that takes a lot of time.
Diana, what are your thoughts?
So my first thought would be now, if we decide on, for example, the stand-up comedy idea, how can we test this? How can we get reactions? That would be my first question before I think about what do I have to do to run this test.
So
if I'm not completely wrong.
Yeah, so how we're going to be building it? How we're going to be testing it?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So if I'm going to just put a note here just for the sake of doing it. So you're saying basically at this point it's the how, and then how to test.
And then what? What to do. Yeah.
And then what to do. And then building the test.
Yeah.
I think one of the elements I'm thinking from Alberto's book was about, in designing a prototype test, having something where the prototypers, the users, have skin in the game. So like that was a really like thinking about, so it's not just like, would you use a thing, but like they bought a ticket, they did a something like that was like designing a test that allowed people to get skin in the game for whatever it was worth. I thought that was a really like, oh, okay, yeah, that really changed. So I think that would be in that end step, like whatever we put as kind of that test we're going to do, how have we built in the opportunity or the invitation from the user to have skin in the game?
So the skin in the game question is something I struggle with Will Choose This. In previous sessions, I embedded it into it where it's like, in this situation, our audience will choose this. And then there was another box that says, and give this. So it's got to be either an email address, or it's a phone number, or it's their time, or it's their money for this reason. I didn't include it here just for the sake of being simple. But do you think it's not, from your perspective, Cody, with that skin in the game variation, do you think it's necessary to kind of put it as part of this entire scenario?
It could, or putting it just somehow, because I can see the desire to want to make, like, you make a prototype that somebody comes and tries, but it's more a prototype. They didn't have to, like, there was no skin in the game. So like that flip somewhere, I think it just has to be that one has put that flip, that like they have to put the dollar in, they have to give the email, they have, like, there's some skin in the game that feels accurate to whatever it is that's being, like, that's sort of it's an element that needs to be included in that final product.
That was exactly my idea, Cody, like with the how to test it. So when I worked with the startups, we tried to find a way to test their idea online in a way. So for most of them, we set up events or a really super simple landing page or something where potential users would have to sign up for the email list, for example, or click to register for the event, or however it was designed in that case. But that's what I think is important in this how to test phase, that you define which test is suitable, which test is kind of relative to the real situation, and what is the so-called skin in the game that the potential user will hand in to prove that they're really interested.
But the idea being is that there should be some indication of skin in the game in the scenario that's being done. Because if you look at the top voted one, it says we'll choose this. We'll buy limited tickets for a stand-up, enjoy your car comedian thing. So there's a purchase aspect here. Whereas we'll click on likes and drive the video's virality may not be the skin in the game that originally is intended, but it could be seen as one. But the idea is that you're really trying to get intent or commitment of some type in that regard. So yeah, okay.
To me, I mean, that we'll choose this has somewhat already of an implicit test in mind, right? That was the whole, at least that's how it came across to me when I saw this column. So already at that point, I was like, this is how I would measure things. And so there's already an implicit how to test in that statement. At least that's how I interpret it.
I think it could be explored in the process so that it's implicit in the first step, but maybe it's called to Diana's point, it's called out explicitly in the second step, and that would lead to kind of how to build, like, all right, so here's how to test it or how we'd like to do it, but then there's the actual kind of doing the work, what would go into it, and I think that's how it could cascade from one state to the next. So I kind of like the thought of where she was going with it. We are over 8 minutes over time, so if anyone has any other comments they'd like to make, please do so, or anything else you'd like to point out about what we've kind of reviewed today. Nothing? You're all set? You're good to go?
Awesome
right.
session as always.
Yeah, so my brain is just blah.
Well, hopefully that's a good thing.
Totally. It's great to try it out.
So I still owe everyone on the call basically a follow-up from yesterday and today. It's just that starting today was the confluence of the mastery program sessions and the Dash sessions. So my available time is somewhat limited, but there will be summaries coming up. It's just that they're going to be a bit delayed as I kind of catch up on the work and getting everything set, but they will be coming.
No problem.
No worries.
Okay.
Thanks, Robin.
All right, thanks everyone. We'll quickly say bye so you can get to wherever you need to go to. And thanks again. Hopefully we'll see you tomorrow. And thank you so much for all of your perspectives. And everyone who was on Zoom and YouTube, thank you so much for coming as well. Okay? Bye,
Thanks,
everybody.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
See you tomorrow.
Bye, Hopper.
Before you go, I want to show you a drawing.
You want to show a drawing?
Yeah.
All right. You still have the cue.
Oh.
No, it's still broadcasting, so you can still go.
All right. Then anyway, look.
Let's put this in. So what is this? This is, you gotta tell
I
everybody
was a
what.
dumb muscle guy.
A dumb muscle guy?
I just take this air, and then these bullies are saying something.
What are the small little guys doing down there?
Those are dummies. I mean, those are bullies.
Oh, those are bullies.
Yeah, they're saying hi, dummy.
Oh, okay. So are they picking on the muscle bomb guy?
Yeah,
Oh,
muscle dumb guy.
but is the muscle dumb guy feeling okay about that, or is he?
He doesn't even care because he's dumb.
Oh, okay.
Dumb muscle guy.
I got it. I have the concept.
And his face is kind of derfy.
Okay. Well, there you go. There's the post image for everyone's still looking. So